before he gets started, you might touch on this during the presentation, but if not, it might be a good way to kick it off.
Okay.
With regard to teaming up with, working with ODOT Right of Way Surveyors, if ODOT provides the initial base files and the resolution, who creates those deliverables and the timing of the deliverables usually?
So if, so I'm guessing if ODOT's providing initial base right-of-way lines, and they're in the process of going to what we call a CRR, then the surveyor that provided those, probably a region surveyor or whatever, would need just be communication that they're working on the CRR, but they've provided the resolve, I guess, which would be the alignment, all the base mapping as far as right-of-way lines, property, and all that sort of stuff. So I know that that's probably coming from one of the ADA standpoint, and from what I kind of know of some of that is that the CRR is in the process of coming. It doesn't have to be done. We prefer to have it done before, but it doesn't always happen that way. So the consultant then that has that file just creates the right-of-way engineering products from it. And then once the CRR is filed, then ODOT will update the map with the recording number and that sort of thing. And if anything was to change in that base information, say the ODOT surveyor finds an error or something, or anything changes, they would need to communicate that with the consultant. So communication. Can't emphasize that one enough either. So, yeah, that hopefully answered the question.
Yes. Robert Harrison was wondering if you could comment on that.
Comment on what?
On who's creating the deliverables and the timing of it, I'm assuming. Let's see.
Right. So that really would depend on the statement of work for each contract would be slightly different. If when the time it's being kicked off, and the region or whoever has done the initial work has completed it, I mean, I still think they're finishing. Now, I don't think that we would consult out giving that information to a consultant and then say, here, file a map on what I resolved, because it's not their information. They aren't the surveyor of record or the one who did it. So I think whoever the surveyor of record, the one who started it, is the one who should finish the filing map. The deliverable as far as right-of-way engineering is the right-of-way map and the descriptions. Does that answer it, Robert?
He was wondering if he could comment on the question.
Oh, he could comment.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Let me, let's see if I can. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Unmute him.
There we go. You guys hear me?
So, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike's comment's correct. I mean, basically, if that's the case, it's in the statement of work. It can go either way, and we've had it go either way. But we like to keep it, Mike's right, we like to keep it with the surveyor of record. We have provided base maps in the past and done CRRs and had the consultant then provide the sketch maps and exhibits. It just all depends on how the statement of work is written, and that's all about resource sharing and getting to the best possible solution to get the project done in those cases. It's gone both ways, but we really like to keep it with the professional of record just because it's easier for everybody's, liability and such and responsibility. So.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Robert. All right, are we ready to move on then? Or we got more questions?
Nope, we're good to go.
Okay. All right, so we're back again. looking at the bridge. Now some of this stuff will kind of be, may seem like a repeat, but this presentation was started by Scott Morrison, predecessor, but this kind of more looking at the internal of the different products that we put together, which is the maps and the descriptions. So we got all our right-of-way drawings, of course, which we've talked about now, our maps. And again, we'll talk about it. They're an internal document, and they're used to design and show the proposed takings, of our project. They serve as an index of all of our files that we've acquired, which are hundreds of thousands of files over the years. And they inventory that, and they're used to record the sales and excess. So when we have property coming in, going out, and also for consultants, if any on there too, donations, not dedications, but donations of right of way for developers and that we put them onto the maps too, the most recent or relevant map. So that's something that's coming into us. So we do that too. And they're used for research by private sectors, ODOT themselves, to where's the highway at? What's access control? Our permitting specialists out in the districts have access to it. They use it to determine access and all those different things for permits and that they give out. And again, they are living documents. Initially, as we're putting them together, they are used to create the legal description for the property and the acquisitions. They're used by the agents, they're used by the appraisers, all of that for acquiring the property, to show the landowners and others. They're used by property management to identify excess property and for future sales, which ODOT has a big one called Section 9 right now that actually was mandated by the state, the government, that we have to identify all of this extra property. I think ODOT is like one of the largest property owners in the state. And we've got a lot of pieces of property out there. And again, they're used for access research and the general public and consultants, other agencies, to help figure out who owns what and where. And there's the two basic types, like we talked about, the roll map and the sheet maps. The historic A and B map, 36-inch, and the 24-inch. The reason why we say 200 inches nowadays, or less than, I should say, is that's the maximum size that PDF will allow. And so it doesn't, and in real life, it'd be 16 foot 8 inches. I have heard, I think there are a couple maps that maybe like over 20 feet long, a couple old roll maps. Here was the explanation about the numbering convention that we talked about, and it had to do with the hard copies and the cubby holes, and such on. And once we quit doing that, we decided that it was really irrelevant to continue that system. And so again, we changed the name, we changed the formats, and everything is in a PDF electronic form now, but they are still plottable or reproducible on paper if we need to or want to, or if someone else does. And if you ever wonder when you get a PDF what size it is, most of you probably know this, but when it's opened, if you kind of hover in the bottom left corner of Adobe with it open, it tells you the size down in the corner of it, the dimensions of that PDF. And of course, we talked about sheet maps, our 1R3s, 1R4s, the 12-inch and the 11-inch by 17. We have added new sizes. We have added an 8.5 by 11, and we have also added 18-inch by 24-inch. Other ones that we do have in here, we talked about, there's Forest Service plats and BLM plats. These are 8.5 by 11s, and they are used in lieu of a written description. Everything is a visual map. We have railroad encroachment drawings. When we deal with the railroads, we have to do specific maps for them, and most of everything there has to have ties to the railroad alignment and railroad mile points. So there's some extra information that has to be added in there for the railroads. We have our exhibit drawings or sketch maps, we call them. We have jurisdictional transfers, relinquishment drawings. There's a design corridor resolution, PR04, I think it's called. What this is this when it's a whole new alignment that deviates or moves away from the existing highway, like a bypass or something like that. And they're prior to the project, and they get approved by the OTC and the director and all that, that basically the highway was here, now it's going to move over here, this section of it. And then there's court exhibits. So 1R map, 1R3, how they came up with 12-inch by 24, I'm not sure, but I'd say it probably was something that was an older, something from back in the day, not a standard printable size that we have today. But they were used for smaller projects, kind of some little narrow, long, a lot of channel changes and different odd ones like that I remember seeing, wetland mitigations and stuff like that. 1R4 sheet maps, which was 11 by 17s, were used quite a bit. A lot of those were done for stockpile sites, maintenance sites, quarry sites, that sort of stuff, or small, like this small bridge or culvert projects. And they're also the size of a survey approval map. 8.5 by 11 prior to all this was typically only used on the BLM and the Forest Service plats. And they have a specific format, which we have the templates for any time that we are getting easements or new right-of-way from the federal government. And so these get laid out in the format. They have different things with acreage, per page within certain areas. And so if you ever do one or need examples, I was just talking to someone the other day, there are some examples out there. Contact your region surveyors. I think region 4 probably and 5 might do the most of these and have the most recent examples. Region 2 does some. And so they're, like I say, they're very specific. They've got a lot of different information. It's basically the same information, but they like to see it a little bit differently and in the format. So if you ever have to do one, like say, contact, your regions and get with them. And they take years to get through and recorded. So the last one I saw was over 3 years by the time it got sent in for approval from the government till it got recorded. So they have been a little faster, but you may be waiting a long time to actually get them fully recorded. Railroad encroachments, similar. They have their own specific thing. They have their specific information. I have not actually done one myself, just to say. But there are examples, region 1, region 2, I'm sure 3 and 4 do too. So if you ever have to do one, if we're doing anything on the railroad and we need to get an easement, we need to do a railroad drawing along with our standard acquisition drawing, only because they do need specific information. So contact the regions or contact us. We can point you to a region to get a current example and information of how to do it. Sketch maps. And this is what most everyone is going to see the most of, because this, like I say, goes through as part of the acquisition process. They are not recorded. So we've had a debate or discussion with some of the consultants that they do want to stamp it or put their stamp on it. We don't say no because but to us, the active drawing means it is not a final product and it could change. So that's up to the individual surveyor. Within ODOT, we do not stamp sketch maps. We have an active drawing stamp and it moves on. They do not get filed or recorded with the deeds. They are an internal document only for assisting the agent and appraisers in acquiring the property with the individual property owners. So we leave that up to your discretion. We won't fight you on it, but personally or within the agency, our stance is it doesn't need to be stamped. Headquarters does most of this work, which is jurisdictional transfers, removing a section of highway that no longer is supported well by the state because of relocation or other things. It would be better served the community by going to the county or a city. And so we do a transfer of jurisdiction. It's not deeded property that way. It's just saying what we have, now we're giving it to you. Usually there's some money involved, other stipulations and stuff in there. And basically it gets, the OTC is the only one that can add to the state highway system or remove from the state highway system a section of road. And so this, by them going through and approving this, they've removed it from the state highway system and is now a county or city road. It may still retain a designation as part of that route that it used to be, but it only as a connector or an old part of the route. Some areas do, some don't. So that's what a jurisdictional transfer looks like. There's sometimes when it's a smaller section, like the other one down here in the right corner, but they're not a deeded transfer. Relinquishments are typically done when we're working with local jurisdictions and we're doing a large project and we need to acquire property for improvements. But once those improvements are done, ODOT doesn't want to retain the property that way. They want to turn it over to the city. And so when we have deeded property that we've acquired, then we will make a relinquishment and we will transfer that deeded title over to them. It still has a reversionary clause because of the highway funds that are used, the gas tax and that. So it has to be used for transportation. It can't be used for anything else. They can't sell it, any of that sort of thing. But we typically do those too. Sometimes there is project related ones, but mostly headquarters does it. A design corridor or survey approval map. This is where I say there's going to be a realignment. It shows basically cartoony from here to here, has enough information for OTC and others to say, yeah, that looks good. We approve it. We'll take the highway funds. Once this is constructed, it will be designated as the new route. The old route will be abandoned, whether that means to, what depends on what color title we own with the old one, or whether it remains as a connector or a business route or transfers to a city or a county or whichever. So there's a lot of different things that can happen based on that. And what it has to do is it has to do with the separation from the original route. If it's fairly close or there's a reason to keep it, we'll remain it as part of the road. But if it's totally changed, then we're just saying, from this point to this point of the crooked road is no longer part of the highway. This new line is the part of the highway, and this becomes connectors or whichever needs to be there. Court exhibits, knock on wood or something dense. I have not had to do one of these yet, so we haven't had a terrible catastrophe where I've had to create one. But they do come into play when we get into some very heavy possible condemnations or battles. And so DOJ may request, these. Typically headquarters will do them, not always, but and they're there to kind of show the situation, what's going on, and that sort of thing. So. Okay, so that's all the different mapping products. Now we move into our descriptions and the components of the description. So our descriptions are a legal description that define the parcels that we want to purchase, easements and rights for the project or excess property or things being sold. So ODOT typically, when at all possible, we like to acquire in fee, permanent easement, temporary easement. The reason we like fee is because then we have all the rights. It's just cleaner, and we don't have to worry about the other things. But it is a lot more expensive and not always necessary. So your legal description, which is your Exhibit A, it gets attached to primarily ODOT likes to deal with a warranty deed, which is a legal color of title, or a bargain and sale deed, which has a little bit different color of title or wording. Essentially, they're the same, but they have different legal aspects to them. And so the legal description, though, per ORS 93, it needs to be capable of being made certain. Can I retrace it? Can someone else retrace it? Is it real, or is it so vague that it has ambiguities, So we want it to be capable of being made certain. And so we've talked about how it's prepared. It's part of the right-of-way file. It contains entire history, the acquisition, part of it. Acquisition as particular grantor, whoever owns the property at the time. They're assigned and they get a unique file number within the right-of-way file number, which is like, 01, 02, 03, 04. And it stays consistent within the sequence of the project. The right-of-way project number is different from the project key number, of course, because the key, and that's ODOT, you have a key number, which is your PE, your design, coming up. Right-of-way has theirs because that's theirs. And then once it goes to construction, then it has a construction number. So there's multiple numbers that a single project gets based on the status or what's going on. Right-of-way files aren't limited to a tax lot. So a deed could describe a larger area, but for some reason the county, or it could be parcel 1, parcel 2 of some said deed. It could be 2 separate tax lots but it may have the same owner, and they may be attached or not attached. You may look at some older files or some larger files, and you'll see file 9. It may have 6 or 7 parcels to that file 9. 2 or 3 of them may be fee, and they may be half a mile or a quarter mile apart or scattered on one side of the road or the other based on the ownership of one person. And so it'd be broken down. So you'll notice that sometimes too. So we've talked about how they're prepared to a point. It can cover acquisition of property with multiple owners. Can also cover acquisition of property that has multiple owners or leaseholders. So a single right-of-way file. So this is like someone that has 1/6 of 1/6, or it's a partnership, or they have people leasing it. So when you get into some deeds, you may see that there may be 3 quitclaim deeds for the same thing inside of acquisition. And that's just all these people that have an interest in the property have to quitclaim their right to what we're acquiring to clean up title, basically. So a single right-of-way file, though, cannot cover acquisitions of different properties with different owners. So one file for one owner. And also in this too is you may have one owner that has 2 tax lots, but one may be agriculture, one may be commercial. Now, a lot of times your right-of-way agents will want you to put those into 2 separate files, so watch for that. The reason why is the agriculture property will be assessed at a different rate than the commercial property. So you may end up with 2 files for one owner, but it's because of the use of the property. So watch out for that too. And also ODOT is different where sometimes we do acquire different rights within the same deed. And we do this by using multiple parcels so that we only have to have one deed, but it has 3 different types of acquisitions or more. I've seen up to 9 different parcels or more sometimes. So the hierarchy of the parcels within a file is fee taking is always number 1, or access is number 1. Then fee would shift in that hierarchy. Then permanent easements, temporary easements, and then we always try to put excess as the last. And if we do that, it works out nicely because then all we have to do is say, if we go to sell or whatever, we just say parcel 4 of such and such deed is what we're selling. So it makes it a lot cleaner that way. So looking at one of our Exhibit A's, you got Exhibit A, got a page number. Here's our right-of-way file number up in the right corner. Here's the right-of-way drawing that it's on, and then a date. And then as you see, that's parcel 1 is fee. We have a statement at the top, which is where it's at, who's the owner, what color title kind of do they have, basically what type of deed. It's recording information, and then we discuss what kind of acquisition we're going to be doing. And if we're doing it off of a center line, you have to have the center line description tied to a government corner or a corner of record, such as a subdivision, primary point or such. Variable width table, which ODOT likes to do strip descriptions, and the reason why is because when you're doing an outline of something with the meets and bounds, there can be opportunity for a gap or an overlap in an opposing description. But when we do from center line, we're saying from the center line here, clear out, we're buying, even though it may be only a little strip, but we're making sure that, because by doing that, there's no chance that if one of those line or that interior line or whatever their property changes, we're not going to leave any gaps, because we're taking basically a swath, and whatever's in that swath we're acquiring. So that's why the strip description works really well for us, and we're in a linear mode. This was also kind of a format that railroads did, so it just works, and that's why we do it. So basis of bearing down here, where the angle comes from, rotation and all that, and then I'll call, of course, the square footage with a more than less. No decimals. We round to the nearest foot, whether up or down. I was always told round it up and give the owner the benefit of the doubt. So that can be a preference, but that just, whenever in doubt, round it up and give them the benefit of the doubt. It's a square foot, half a square foot, quarter of a square foot, whichever. Acres. Acres are to the 100th of an acre. So that is a decimal. Now in discussion, we haven't got there, but well, I'll leave that later, another discussion. All right, page 2, same information continues on. Parcel 2 is a temporary easement. Parcel 3 is a temporary easement, and these are stamped, and ODOT does digital stamping. what that can be, we have our own program, but I think Adobe and all that does it too. What they'll do, and you know, if you try to combine or do anything, it breaks the stamp, goes away. Right away, what they'll do to include this into a packet is they will print them off and scan them so that it says digitally signed there. They still have the original digital stamped copy if it's needed. So that's the direction. You can still send in a wet stamp, that's fine. It's just kind of moving up the age of digital stamping. Okay. So attached to them contain all the parcels being acquired in a deed. Each parcel description has a title defining it, like we showed, being purchased. There's a caption that locates the parcel by deed reference, subdivision, donation, land claim, or section. Centerline description, basis of bearing, area of the parcel, and may contain qualifying or augmenting clauses. I didn't get into that, which there would be it also, you know, an also clause would be including. Augmenting would say except therefrom, parcel 1 or something like that. And parcels cannot be described by tax lot only. So tax lots are not capable of being made certain. They are cartography shapes that assessors put in. They can change over time. They could be combined. They can go away. So no just tax lot number. So, okay, addendums. So addendums started out, and what they contain is they are metadata about the right-of-way file, and it's used for the acquisition process. It's used by the document specialist within ODOT that puts together the documents to go out to the homeowners, landowners to acquire the property. They have the grantor's name, typically number of parcels, of course, the project, and again, the file number, the drawing number. Typically, we put on here who created it. We don't do that on the Exhibit A, it's only on the addendum. The access rights being acquired or changed is on there. Again, in RITs, we can generate this and the right-of-way agent puts it on their side. But if we're putting this together, make sure that you have that, or just say, put a question mark and say, I don't know, you know, as far as the right-of-way engineering surveyors. Don't put none if you don't know for sure, because that will cause problems. If you don't know for sure, don't put anything. So, okay. Location by section, but you do need to know if there's something changing, because you're going to write a parcel on access if something's changing. So you should have some idea prior to doing the addendum. But okay. Location by the section, tax lot at the time. Tax lot does go in here because it is part of this RIT system that kind of locks in there, because they have to go and run PTRs and checks against the property, see if there's liens, taxes paid, that sort of thing. Remainder area, again, we typically, because assessors look at tax maps, we typically will use the assessor's maps area and subtract from that. Unless there's an egregious error, then note it that you don't agree with the tax map because of this. The deed doesn't call it or something. All the prior files, and the reason for that is that you need to be able to see if there was rights that were acquired in prior files that are going to affect this file. And so it helps point people in the direction to know what we had acquired, if anything, before. And so this is an informational sheet for internal, and it does not go with the deed or anything else. So, and down here, I'm talking about the RITs implementation. You can do the file addendum in this form, which is part of the boilerplate description Word document, or we do have the RITs metadata worksheet, which is located on our our website also, and there's a link inside of the manual, and you can just fill out all the same information basically, but you don't have to have it in that form. And then the person entering it into RITS punches all that information into the boxes, and then they push a generate button. It pulls the access information and impact notes from the agent side of RITS and creates an addendum page that looks just like the other. But you didn't have to punch in the access information. So 2 ways of doing it. Some regions and some others still like to do the full addendum. That's fine. But they do need to double check that the right-of-way agent has the same access information on their side as what we're putting in on the right-of-way engineering surveyor side or description side. Stamping descriptions. So, per ODOT's preference, written legal descriptions for our property, acquisitions, surplus sales, relinquishment, jurisdictional transfers, resolutions, they're all prepared under supervision and control of a registered surveyor, land surveyor in the state of Oregon, and they are stamped with the surveyor's seal. So this policy satisfies the ORSs and OARs requiring professional land surveyors to stamp all final documents. So though the law allows either wet or digital, ODOT has been doing the digital signatures. So you're still, if you're outside ODOT and you do wet stamps, that's fine. We do send in electronic stamps, that's good too. Documents to be stamped. All final documents will be recorded with the county for any acquisition, surplus, sale, transfer. They're required to be sealed with surveyor's digital stamp or wet stamp. The last page of the Exhibit A, not every page, just the last page, your Forest Service and BLM plats, because the plat takes place as the written description for them. Your Exhibit Bs for jurisdictional transfers and relinquishments and abandonments. Any drawings that are included within a deed. So when we get a donation from a private surveyor that comes in and they refer to an Exhibit B map, they'll stamp both of them, and that's good. And any other document that's considered to be final and going to be recorded or put out there, that should be stamped. And it's the discrepancy of the surveyor. That's just kind of examples of all of them. Documents that are not required to be stamped. Addendum sheets, they're not sealed with surveyor stamp. They're not a legal description. They're just information sheets. They have no legal status to them. Right-of-way drawings, including sketch maps. And so if you do want to stamp it, you can, that's up to you. But we put in there, they're not final documents and they have a status stamp that says it is subject to change. Sketch maps do not go with the deeds, and they're only for internal information only, or sharing with acquisition with a landowner, but they are not a final drawing, and they're not considered to be that from our standpoint. But we're not going to say you can't stamp it. So, and that's it. And oh, I got done early there, didn't I? So, all right. Again, contact us. Contact your region surveyors. Your mentors, those around. Like I say, we all want to do it right. We want to get the information out there. I know it's a lot, different. ODOT is very specific. Only because we'll get into that too. One of the biggest reasons we try to stay consistent with our mapping standards, our description standards, our easement standards, A lot of these is because we have boilerplates that are approved by Department of Justice. We potentially have condemnation where Department of Justice has to represent us in a court. And the more consistent we stay with all of our information, our descriptions, our maps, everything else, the easier it is on everyone because they know what to expect and where to find it and what it means. There's a reason why we're picky, you know, so it's not any other reason than it really helps us in the end to stay consistent. So, okay, any questions? If not, we'll get an early lunch or a long lunch.
It looks like, let's see. Can you expand on preliminary stamping and final stamping?
Preliminary stamping on the right-of-way map, as we talked there. So there's the 3 different stamps. The reason for the preliminary stamp we talked about is when we're doing a staged acquisition under one project or file. So say a big one like Newburgh-Dundee bypass, and they go in and they say, we know we're going to do it, but we need to get this one file done right now, and we've got the money for it. But we know that there's going to be 10 more files, you know, coming up, and we want to keep it all on the same map, but we want to acquire these right now. So you do preliminary stamp on there, which means this is just the first part, and we're going to come back and get more. And so that way, when they send it in, everybody knows that this isn't, quote, the whole project or the whole acquisition for the project. This is only a small part. So it says preliminary. Now, once you get to the bigger project, when we start acquiring everything else, say 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, whatever, then we would change that to active, because now we're getting everything that we need to acquire on that one map. But it's the same one. We didn't have to create multiple maps. So that's preliminary versus active. And then that final or right away, it's still not final. It says it could change. And that's when it's deed recorded and the project's done. So hopefully that answered it.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any other questions.
Okay.
Oh, Mike,
No other question. What, Paul?
I just wanted to add to your thing about that is just the idea that
Okay.
when a description is ever sent in, you need to send a map too. And that's why we have that preliminary, because if the project's not all done yet, but you're still sending the partial descriptions or just a description in, we have to have a map. And so that's why we gave them a preliminary stamp.
Right. Yeah, because if that deed gets recorded, then say a private surveyor or someone else, and they go looking for that map that's noted on there, and the map's not to be found, you know. So yeah, so that preliminary is just for those reasons. Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
One other question. Will ODOT ask for the documents to be stamped as final? And are they preliminary until ODOT asks for it?
Yeah, so like if you're wanting to send in for like initial review of your Exhibit A, just put a stamp and say, you know, preliminary or temporary or draft. You don't have to, don't do a full stamp on anything that's getting sent in for a first review. Stamp them after you've done a first review and they say that everything's good to go, then do your digital stamp or your wet stamp on them. Yeah. I think that was the question.
Yeah, and are they preliminary until ODOT asks for it?
They're going to be preliminary until you say they're done. So you can leave them preliminary, yeah, until ODOT says, I think everything's good, and then do a final stamp and send in your final submission. Yeah. Because they can't do anything with it if it says preliminary on it, and they'll come to you and say, hey, I need a final. I do that I do that a lot with jurisdictional transfers and relinquishments and stuff, because they'll ask for description or a document. I usually send it as a draft or preliminary. Sometimes it could be 6 months. Some things I've been sitting around for a year, and then finally they're like, oh, we're ready for this. Can you update and give us the final? And okay. So it's just a matter of changing, taking something off of there and doing the final stamp on it, or correcting or updating or something.
Great. I think that answers that question. Yeah. And nothing else so far?
Okay. Yeah, for consultants, discuss that with your project leader, or depending on, or your, so a lot of time maybe your sub. So work that out with your prime. If you have a prime, discuss that with the region surveyor, whoever is going to be reviewing your descriptions. So kind of discuss that, the format that they'd like it in, and timing and that sort of thing. So communication, yeah, just work together. Okay. Well, should we just take lunch a little bit early, but let's stay with the schedule and just still come back at 12:45. How's that work?
Mike, I had one other thing.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Well, when the consultants or whoever sends descriptions in to be reviewed, they should not send they should send in ones that they think are pretty much almost ready to go, so.
Oh, yeah. No, they're 90, supposed, they want them, 90, 99% complete, but we're talking like the initial first one. So, yeah.
It's like we have one last question that just popped up. Will preliminary documents delay acquisitions?
Oh, that all depends on timelines. So preliminary documents, I mean, they're still preliminary until they're done correctly. So you can put a stamp on a document that has errors, and they find the errors, it's going to get sent back. So whether it's preliminary or whether it's final, timeline wise, you just have to hit your timelines. So, but that's why I encourage early, get your map done, get that, all those things, and send in a first draft of 1 or 2 descriptions and a map. Doesn't have to be totally complete or perfect, but try it, of course, like I say, we're not here to do your work for you, but we're here to help you with your work. So you kind of, you want it what you would call complete, and then get it critiqued and that sort of thing. It's so much easier to do it right off the bat, fix the things that, need fixed, then move on. And if you've done your peer reviews, always do a peer review. You stare at that document so much that you look right over spelling errors. You look right over the top of missing words. You look over all of those things. Have peer review. Once you've done peer review, and then you feel that they're finalized, stamp them and send them in.
And then I have something to add to that too, Mike. Okay, so also the thing to realize is once you send them in to be uploaded to RITs, and if they're uploaded to RITs, then the only way to change them is through a revision, and that does stall the right-of-way process.
Yes, if it gets past that point, like we were saying, that it starts that clock over again, and then you're stuck, and that's probably a larger delay to the project than anything. Is that 40-day clock or whatever they have if it has to go through a formal revision. So just don't get in a hurry and try to make sure everything looks good. So, and we're surveyors, we're people. Just like this morning, I got totally out of whack. We make errors, we correct, we balance, but we get back on track and keep going. So it's all good.
Great. Well, there are no other questions, so I guess we're ready for lunch.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see you in just a little over an hour then.
Yep. 12:45, correct?